Okay, so why is getting your EA better than the annual filing season program record of completion or being a CPA? Well, it's not a matter of status, folks. Okay, there are real tangible reasons when it comes to the tax community when being an enrolled agent is very, very valuable. First of all, becoming an EA really is easier and cheaper than becoming a CPA. First of all, to become an EA, if you take a really rigorous study program, a lot like mine, you can become an EA in 6 months or less. If you just use the software study tools, you might be able to do it faster, and you're going to learn enough to pass the exam, but not enough to run a practice, do tax returns, or really to do the representation. I have seen some people go through the program with the various study tools that are out there, and they've been able to do it with only 6 weeks of studying, but they had a tax background to begin with. So literally, if you've already got years of experience, and some people are 60 and 70 years old when they do this, they study using Gleim or Fast Forward Academy or something, and they get it done in 6 weeks and pass all 3 exams. But having your EA literally makes you stand out in the tax community, and the IRS has a very high level of respect for enrolled agents, especially since when they retire from the IRS, they can become enrolled agents by filing some paperwork with the IRS once they've been there in certain capacities for at least 5 years, so they know who EAs are, and they tend to treat us, don't tell anyone, but they tend to treat us a little bit better than CPAs because they identify with us. If you want to see exactly how many tax professionals there are, as of the beginning of this year, you had to get a Prepare a Tax ID number. Remember that PTIN I told you about, which is free. As of January 2nd, there were 754,000 PTINs issued, rounded to the nearest hundredth and to the nearest thousand, right? There are about 23,000 attorneys, 180,000 CPAs. Enrolled actuaries and enrolled retirement plan agents aren't really significant in numbers, and there were 50,000 enrolled agents. But the PTIN people, the people with the annual filing season program record of completion down at the bottom, 44,000 of those people. Now, if you do the math, that basically means there are about 454,000 people who are preparing tax returns, filing electronically, and have no credentials whatsoever. How does that happen? Well, there is no federal standard with a minimum requirement for education and training to be a tax professional, and only 3 states at this point, California, Oregon, and Maryland, actually have stringent licensing and testing requirements. That means the other 47 states and District of Columbia and Puerto Rico and whatever any other territories have no licensing requirements whatsoever. So let's look at a comparison of the different types of tax credentials you can get. The EA, the CPA, and the annual filing season program. So first of all, when it comes to education, there's no specific entry-level education required except for CPAs, and they have to have at least 150 semester hours of education. When it comes to training and experience, there's no experience requirement except for CPAs, and they have to work for 2 years either in a CPA firm or under the direction of an accountant in industry, depending on what kind of a certification they are going for. So CPAs, in order to practice as CPAs or even get the right to use a power of attorney, they have to wait for 4 years of college and 2 years of working in industry. So even if they go through college quickly in 3 years, it's still going to be about 5 years before they get to sign on a power of attorney and get that authority. EAs don't have to wait that long. What about exams? So the enrolled agent takes these 3 exams. As long as they're passed within 24 months, they don't have to take any exams again. CPAs have to take 4 exams. Now remember, all of the EA exams are on taxation. CPA exams, there are 4 of them. They have financial auditing, not tax auditing, business accounting, and regulation. They don't have any exam that is simply on tax, although some of their exams do include tax questions. But the CPAs don't have to take any exam purely on tax. Now, look at that lowest level credential, the annual filing season program record of completion. Every single year, they have to take a 6-hour federal tax course, which is a federal tax update course, and answer a 100-question exam after that course. They have to take that exam and that 6-hour course every single year in addition to any other continuing education they have to take. And personally, the last thing I want to do is have to take a 100-question exam every single year. But what about continuing education? How much continuing education do these professions have to take in federal taxation? Well, enrolled agents, remember I told you we have to take 72 hours in 3 years with a minimum of 16 hours or at least 24 on the average every year. We have to take 2 hours of ethics and the rest in federal taxation subjects. And if we're members of organizations, then we have to take at least 30 hours, including the 2 hours of ethics. Certified public accountants, although they do have to take continuing education, there is no requirement whatsoever that they have to take continuing education in taxation. But I will tell you, the AICPA does have a tax unit, as does the Bar Association. So if you're looking for a CPA who really knows their taxes or an attorney who knows their taxes, you want to make sure that they are members of that unit of the AICPA or the Bar Association. What can we do with our different levels of credential? When it comes to the IRS, EAs and CPAs can represent taxpayers at all levels of the IRS, but EAs can represent all over the country when it comes to state issues. CPAs can only represent state issues within states where they're licensed to practice. So if they need to talk to a state and they're licensed in California and they need to talk to Illinois, they might not be able to do that without some other reciprocity, perhaps some other testing. And the annual filing season, folks, they are only allowed to represent clients whose tax returns they actually prepared and signed if that little box is checked where the taxpayer says they are allowing them to be their designated representative, and they can only represent the client relating to audits or questions about the preparation of that tax return. If there's a balance due or any other issues with that tax return, they can't talk to the IRS. They can't talk to collections. They can't talk to appeals. They can't talk to IRS attorneys or anywhere else. Now, how soon can you start representing clients before the Internal Revenue Service? An EA can do that within about 60 days of passing the EA exam. So you study for between 6 weeks and 6 months, you get your EA credential, and within 3 to 6 months, 3 to 7 months, you can actually start representing your clients. CPAs have to wait until going to college, 2 years after graduating college, passing the exam, and working in a qualifying job before they can be added to an IRS power of attorney. The annual filing season program, folks, they have to recertify every single year, meet the annual requirements, and then they can sign the tax return and be able to represent their clients only on the tax returns that they've signed. What about working in the tax court? Well, EAs and CPAs are allowed to sit for the tax court exam, which is offered every other year. On the other hand, since we can help our clients prepare a lot of the material for tax court, there is a lot we can do, and I teach my students how to prepare a petition for tax court and help the client do it themselves on smaller issues. Obviously, on very large issues, it's better to work with somebody who has passed that tax court exam, and they'll have a USTC after their name, or a tax attorney who can practice. And where can we practice? Well, EAs can practice anywhere in the country, and a lot of people who have foreign relatives, backgrounds, people in the Philippines, India, Australia, or whatever, they can practice overseas and do everything that they could do from here in the United States. And since we have access to a lot of online electronic systems through e-services, we don't even have to call the IRS very often. CPAs are licensed by state. So as I mentioned before, while they can work with the IRS, they can't work with the states unless they recertify in the states. And AFSPs, they have no visibility or authority with states at all. Who is a good person? Who's a good candidate to become an enrolled agent? Well, first of all, you have to have a PTIN. You have to have that Preparer Tax ID number. And if you've already got one of those and you have your AFSP but you don't have any other credential or education, why not become an EA and stop taking that annual 100-question exam? Somebody who's an accounting student and maybe they're on a CPA track, you can get your EA while you're studying your accounting and be able to represent people and be on a power of attorney even before you finally finish your CPA and before you spend 2 years in an accounting firm or a CPA firm. You can become really valuable, even more valuable to a firm because you have your EA by the time they hire you. And then you can still go on and finish your CPA. And a lot of EAs also become CPAs. Same thing with a CPA candidate. So you finished college, you've sat for the CPA exam, now you've got to do the 2 years of apprenticeship and so forth, or you still have to pass the exam. Why not just get the EA out of the way while testing and learning is still fresh in your mind? Get that out of the way and you can do a lot of things in a CPA firm or a tax office even before you become a CPA. A lot of people have passion for numbers. They like numbers and people. They want to work with people and they want to change careers. I have had people come to my class who were retired doctors or engineers or nursing or plumbers or people who've had all kinds of interesting different backgrounds, truckers, and they don't want to be out on the road anymore. They're getting older. They don't want to do physical work. And so they have a lot of friends, a lot of contacts. They want to change careers. This is perfect.